Leaving you was the best decision my son ever made. My mother-in-law said it loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear. A few people turned toward our table. Someone actually stopped eating. And 5 minutes later, she was the one fighting back tears while her son stood frozen in shock. My name is Sophie Carter, and for 3 years I believed my failed marriage was entirely my fault. That was exactly what my ex-husband, Ethan, and his mother wanted me to believe. The truth was far uglier. And on the night she publicly humiliated me, that truth finally came crashing into the light. It all started 6 months after my divorce. The divorce itself had been brutal. Not because Ethan cheated. Not because we fought constantly. Actually, the worst part was how quietly everything fell apart. One day we were planning a vacation. The next day he was sleeping in the guest room. Then suddenly lawyers were involved. Every time I asked what happened, Ethan gave the same answer. I just don't think we're compatible anymore. That was it. No explanation. No real reason. Just a vague sentence that destroyed 7 years of marriage. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I wasn't supportive enough. Maybe I had changed. My mother-in-law, Diane, certainly encouraged those thoughts. The day Ethan moved out, she called me. Not to comfort me. Not to help me. To blame me. You never deserved my son. Those were her exact words. I remember sitting on my kitchen floor afterward and crying for hours. For months, Diane told anyone who would listen that I had ruined Ethan's life. Family gatherings became impossible. Mutual friends disappeared. People I had known for years suddenly treated me differently. It felt like I was being erased. Meanwhile, Ethan remained silent. He never defended me. Never corrected the rumors. Never stopped his mother. That hurt more than the divorce itself. Then came the restaurant. The place where everything changed. I was having dinner with my best friend, Rachel. Nothing special. Just 2 friends catching up. Halfway through the meal, Rachel's face suddenly changed. Her eyes widened. Then she looked behind me. Sophie. I turned around. And immediately saw them. Ethan. His mother Diane. And several relatives from his side of the family. My stomach dropped. Of all the restaurants in the city. Of all the nights. They had walked into mine. I considered leaving. Honestly, I should have. But before I could stand, Diane spotted me. The smile on her face wasn't friendly. It looked victorious. Like someone who had been waiting for this moment. She walked directly toward my table. Ethan followed behind her. Looking uncomfortable. But not uncomfortable enough to stop her. Never uncomfortable enough to stop her. Diane folded her arms. Looked me up and down. Then laughed. Actually laughed. Well, look who it is. Rachel immediately sat straighter. I could tell she sensed trouble. I remained calm. Or at least I tried to. Hello, Diane. She smirked. Then delivered the sentence that would change everything. Leaving you was the best decision my son ever made. The restaurant went quiet around us. Not completely. But quiet enough. People were listening. Watching. Waiting. I felt heat rush into my face. Humiliation. Anger. Heartbreak. All at once. And then Diane continued. He smiles now. Another smirk. Something he never did when he was with you. I looked at Ethan. Surely he would stop this. Surely. Instead, he stared at the floor. Silent. Exactly like always. That silence hurt more than her words. Because silence is agreement. Rachel slammed her glass onto the table. Are you serious right now? Diane ignored her. She kept staring at me. Waiting for me to break. Waiting for me to cry. Waiting for me to become the villain she had spent years describing. Instead, something unexpected happened. A voice interrupted from behind her. "That's funny." Everyone turned. A man stood near the entrance. Tall. Professional looking. Holding a folder. I recognized him instantly. My attorney. Mark Henderson. My heart skipped a beat. Because Mark wasn't supposed to be there. Not tonight. Not now. The expression on his face told me something was very wrong. Or very right. He walked toward our table. Then looked directly at Ethan. "Actually, I've been trying to reach you." Ethan's face went pale. Instantly. The change was so dramatic that even Diane noticed. "What is this?" she demanded. Mark ignored her. He opened the folder. Then pulled out several documents. The moment Ethan saw them, his hands started shaking. My stomach tightened. Because suddenly I remembered something. 3 weeks earlier, a former coworker had contacted me. She claimed Ethan might have hidden financial information during our divorce. At the time, I dismissed it. The accusation sounded impossible. Now I wasn't so sure. Mark placed the papers on the table. "Ethan, these records were recovered yesterday." Diane frowned. "What records?" Nobody answered. Not immediately. Because Ethan looked like a man watching his entire world collapse. Then came the first twist. A huge one. The divorce settlement. The one that left me struggling financially. The one that forced me to sell my apartment. The one Ethan insisted was fair. Had been based on false information. For over 2 years, Ethan secretly owned part of a rapidly growing technology company. A stake worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Possibly more. And according to the documents, he never disclosed it. Not to me. Not to the court. Not to anyone involved in the divorce. Diane laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous." But nobody else was laughing. Especially Ethan. Because he knew the documents were real. I looked at him. My voice barely worked. "You hid assets?" He didn't answer. Which was answer enough. The restaurant suddenly felt very small. Very quiet. And for the first time in years, I realized maybe I wasn't the reason my marriage failed. Maybe I'd been lied to. Maybe I'd been manipulated. Maybe the entire story I believed was built on a foundation of deception. And the worst part? The night was only getting started. Because within the next few minutes, another secret would emerge. A secret that would explain exactly why Ethan divorced me. A secret his mother had helped hide. A secret that would leave both of them wishing they'd never walked into that restaurant. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire restaurant seemed frozen. My eyes stayed locked on Ethan. The man I had loved for 7 years. The man who convinced me our divorce was simply the result of growing apart. Now he looked terrified. Not sad. Not guilty. Terrified. And that difference mattered. Diane stepped between us. "What kind of nonsense is this?" My attorney calmly handed her one of the documents. She scanned the page. Then another. Then another. The confidence vanished from her face. "These aren't real." But her voice sounded weak. Even she didn't believe it. Mark remained calm. "They're very real." I watched Ethan swallow hard. His hands were trembling. That was when I finally found my voice. "How long?" He looked away. "How long what?" "How long did you hide it?" The question hung in the air. His silence felt louder than any answer. Then Mark spoke. "The ownership records date back almost 3 years." 3 years. I nearly stopped breathing. 3 years. Which meant Ethan secretly acquired the company stake while we were still married. While we shared a home. While we shared finances. While I trusted him. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. The betrayal suddenly became much bigger than divorce. Much bigger than money. It was deception. Deliberate deception. Then came the second twist. The one nobody expected. Including me. A voice suddenly called out from another table. Ethan, just tell the truth. Everyone turned. A woman stood near the back of the restaurant. Young. Elegant. Beautiful. And judging by Ethan's expression, very familiar. The color drained from his face. Completely. My heart immediately knew what my brain hadn't processed yet. No. No, no, no. Please no. The woman slowly walked toward us. Every step felt like another piece of a nightmare. Then she stopped beside Ethan. And looked directly at me. The guilt in her eyes told me everything. Before she even spoke. I'm sorry. My stomach dropped. Rachel grabbed my hand under the table. I barely noticed. The woman continued. I never wanted you to find out like this. Find out what? I already knew. Deep down, I already knew. Then she said it. The sentence that shattered the last illusion I had left. Ethan and I have been together for almost 4 years. The room disappeared. 4 years. 4 years. We were married for 7. That meant. My mind started connecting the timeline. And every connection hurt. The business trips. The late-night meetings. The sudden emotional distance. The unexplained weekends. The divorce. None of it was random. It never was. I stared at Ethan. Waiting. Begging. Praying for him to deny it. He didn't. Instead, he lowered his head. And that silence became his confession. The affair had started years before our marriage ended. The relationship existed while he kissed me goodbye every morning. While he celebrated anniversaries. While he promised he loved me. I felt physically sick. Diane immediately jumped into defense mode. People fall out of love. Rachel stood up so quickly her chair nearly fell over. For years, she shouted. That's not falling out of love. That's cheating. Several people nearby nodded. Diane looked furious. Not at Ethan. At Rachel. At me. At anyone threatening her version of reality. Then the woman surprised everyone. Especially Ethan. She looked directly at me. And said something unexpected. I didn't know he was lying to you. The room became silent again. Ethan looked horrified. Jessica. Don't. Her voice cut through the air like a knife. For the first time, I saw anger in her eyes. Real anger. Not toward me. Toward him. Then she revealed another secret. Apparently Ethan hadn't just lied to me. He lied to her too. 4 years. According to Jessica, he claimed our marriage was already over. Claimed we lived separate lives. Claimed we were only staying together temporarily. Every cliché in existence. Every excuse cheaters use. My chest tightened. Not because I felt bad for Ethan. Because I suddenly realized how many people he'd manipulated. Not just me. Everyone. Then came the biggest twist of the night. The one that changed everything. Jessica looked at Diane. Then looked back at me. I didn't come here for dinner. Nobody understood. Including Ethan. Then she pulled an envelope from her purse. My attorney immediately recognized it. So did Ethan. And judging by his expression, he desperately hoped nobody would open it. Unfortunately for him, Jessica handed it directly to me. What is this? Her answer hit like lightning. Proof. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Inside were copies of emails, messages, financial records, private conversations. Months of them. Maybe years. As I flipped through the pages, my heart pounded harder and harder. Because Diane wasn't just aware of the affair. She helped hide it. Every lie. Every cover story. Every secret meeting. Everything. My mother-in-law wasn't protecting her son. She was helping him betray me. For years. Suddenly every cruel comment made sense. Every accusation. Every insult. Every attempt to paint me as the villain. She wasn't defending Ethan. She was protecting the secret. The restaurant felt completely silent now. Even people at nearby tables had stopped pretending not to listen. Then I found one particular email. One sentence. One devastating sentence. Written by Diane. To Ethan. Years earlier. I read it out loud. If Sophie ever learns the truth, make sure she believes the divorce was her fault. My voice cracked. Rachel covered her mouth. Jessica looked away. And Ethan closed his eyes. Because there it was. The truth. The entire truth. For years, I carried guilt that never belonged to me. I questioned myself. Blamed myself. Hated myself. While they quietly manipulated the narrative. While they watched me suffer. While they let me believe I was broken. Tears filled my eyes. But they weren't tears of weakness anymore. They were tears of release. The burden I'd carried for years suddenly disappeared. Because it was never mine. Then something incredible happened. Diane started crying. Not because she felt guilty. Because she realized she had lost control. The entire story she'd spent years building was collapsing in public. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. 5 minutes earlier, she stood over my table telling everyone that leaving me was the best decision her son ever made. Now everyone knew the truth. He didn't leave because I failed him. He left because he cheated. He lied. He hid money. And he let his mother destroy my reputation to protect himself. But the night wasn't over yet. Because karma was about to arrive from a direction none of them saw coming. And when it did, both Ethan and Diane would lose far more than their dignity. I thought the humiliation Ethan and Diane experienced in that restaurant would be enough. I was wrong. Their real nightmare was only beginning. For several minutes after the emails were revealed, nobody spoke. The atmosphere felt suffocating. People at nearby tables were openly watching now. A waiter approached, realized something dramatic was happening, and quietly backed away. Ethan looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Diane looked even worse. The woman who had spent years controlling every narrative was suddenly trapped inside one she couldn't control. Then my attorney broke the silence. There is one more issue. Ethan immediately looked sick. The reaction was so obvious that even strangers noticed. My stomach tightened. What issue? Mark slowly closed the folder. The concealed business ownership isn't simply a divorce matter anymore. The color drained from Ethan's face. I could almost see panic spreading through him. Because he knew exactly what was coming. The hidden company stake wasn't worth hundreds of thousands anymore. The technology company had recently exploded in value. According to updated valuations, Ethan's ownership was now worth several $1 million. Several million. The restaurant erupted with whispers. Even I was stunned. Not because of the money. Because of what it meant. The divorce settlement had been based on fraudulent disclosures. The entire agreement could potentially be reopened. And Ethan knew it. Diane suddenly stood up. This is ridiculous. Mark remained calm. Actually, it's very serious. For the first time all evening, Ethan interrupted. Mom. Stop. The word shocked everyone. Especially Diane. She stared at her son. Almost offended. As if she couldn't believe he had spoken to her that way. But something had changed. The lies were exposed. The affair was exposed. The hidden assets were exposed. There was nowhere left to run. Then came the moment nobody expected. Jessica stood up. The woman Ethan had chosen over me. The woman I had every reason to hate. And yet she looked heartbroken. Not victorious. Not happy. Heartbroken. She turned toward Ethan. Was any of it real? Ethan froze. What? Our relationship. The pain in her voice was genuine. For the first time, I realized she wasn't celebrating either. She had been lied to as well. Maybe not in the same way. But still lied to. Then she asked a question that seemed simple. But destroyed him. If you lied to your wife for years, how do I know you're not lying to me? Silence. Complete silence. Because there was no answer. Not a good one anyway. Jessica laughed bitterly. Then tears filled her eyes. Oh my God. She looked devastated. As if she had just realized the person she loved didn't actually exist. Not the version she believed in. Not the version he pretended to be. The real Ethan was standing in front of everyone. And he wasn't impressive. He wasn't brave. He wasn't honest. He was simply a man caught in his own web of lies. Then she removed a ring from her finger. The entire restaurant watched. Even Diane. Especially Diane. Jessica placed the ring on the table. I'm done. Ethan's head snapped up. What? I'm done. The words landed like a bomb. His face completely collapsed. Because suddenly he wasn't losing one relationship. He was losing both. The marriage he destroyed. And the relationship he destroyed it for. Jessica grabbed her purse. Then looked directly at me. I truly am sorry. I nodded slowly. Not because everything was forgiven. But because I finally believed her. Then she walked away. And never looked back. Ethan stared after her in stunned silence. 5 years of lies. Gone in 10 seconds. Then karma arrived from another direction. His phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again. And again. Finally he answered. I watched his expression change almost instantly. Confusion. Shock. Fear. Then complete disbelief. What do you mean? His voice cracked. Everyone could hear it. What happened? Another long pause. Then he slowly lowered the phone. His hands were shaking. What is it? Diane asked. Ethan looked completely broken. The acquisition fell through. Nobody understood. Except Mark. And Mark suddenly smiled. Not a cruel smile. A knowing smile. Apparently the technology company had been negotiating a massive buyout. The deal was expected to make several investors extremely wealthy. Including Ethan. But news of the fraud investigation had already reached certain parties. And the acquisition had been suspended pending review. Just like that. Millions disappeared. At least temporarily. Possibly permanently. Diane sat down heavily. She looked stunned. The consequences were finally becoming real. Not theoretical. Real. Then something unexpected happened. My phone vibrated. A message. From an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I opened it. The text came from someone who had worked with Ethan years earlier. Someone who recognized his name after hearing about the situation. The message contained only one sentence. He didn't just hide money from you. Attached was a file. I opened it. Then stared. And stared again. Because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Years before our divorce, Ethan secretly transferred funds through multiple accounts. Not illegal, but dishonest. Money intentionally hidden during financial reviews. My attorney's eyes widened when he saw the records. Oh wow. That's never something lawyers say casually. Ethan saw the file. And immediately looked defeated. Completely defeated. Because he knew. The truth wasn't slowly emerging anymore. It was flooding out. Every secret. Every lie. Every deception. All at once. Then Diane finally broke. For real this time. Not performatively. Not strategically. Genuinely. She buried her face in her hands. And started crying. Years earlier, she could have told Ethan to stop. She could have told him to tell the truth. She could have chosen integrity. Instead, she chose loyalty without accountability. And now she was watching the consequences unfold in real time. The strange thing was, I didn't feel happy. Not exactly. I expected revenge to feel better. I expected victory to feel bigger. Instead, I mostly felt sad. Because none of this needed to happen. If Ethan had been honest. If Diane had acted like a mother instead of a protector of bad behavior. If someone had told the truth years ago. We wouldn't be here. Then Ethan finally looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time all night. For the first time in years. His eyes were red. His voice barely worked. Sophie. I waited. The entire restaurant seemed to wait. Then he whispered. I'm sorry. 3 words. The words I spent years wanting to hear. The words I imagined 1,000 times. And strangely, they meant almost nothing now. Because apologies arrive differently when they're spoken before exposure. His came after. After the lies were discovered. After the affair was revealed. After the money was uncovered. After everything collapsed. I looked at him quietly. Then answered honestly. I know. His eyes widened. Not because I forgave him. Because he realized I no longer needed anything from him. Not closure. Not explanations. Not validation. Nothing. The power he once had over my emotions was gone. And that hurt him more than anger ever could. I stood up. Rachel immediately joined me. My attorney gathered his files. The evening was over. As we walked toward the exit, Diane suddenly spoke. Her voice shook. Sophie. I turned. The woman who once stood over me and declared that leaving me was the best decision her son ever made now looked completely broken. She opened her mouth. Then closed it. Whatever she wanted to say never arrived. Because deep down, she already knew. There was nothing left to say. The damage was done. I gave a small nod. Then walked away. 6 months later, the divorce settlement was officially reopened. The financial deception cost Ethan dearly. Professionally and personally. Jessica never returned. The company eventually removed him from several leadership opportunities. His reputation suffered. His finances suffered. His relationships suffered. And for the first time in his life, there was no one left to blame. As for me? I rebuilt. Slowly. Painfully. But honestly. I stopped measuring my worth through someone else's opinion. I stopped carrying guilt that never belonged to me. I stopped apologizing for mistakes I didn't make. And 1 year later, I found something I thought I'd lost forever. Peace. Real peace. The funny thing is, Diane was right about one thing. Leaving me was the biggest decision her son ever made. The only part she got wrong was who actually benefited from it. Because 5 minutes after she tried to humiliate me in that restaurant, the truth started coming out. And once the truth arrived, it never stopped. In the end, Ethan lost the woman he betrayed me for. Lost the reputation he spent years building. Lost the future he thought was guaranteed. While I gained something far more valuable. The freedom to finally live a life built on truth. And that's a trade I would make every single time.